Hello and welcome to the Save the Punter Betting Show, the programme where we do the research for you so you don't have to. Every week we preview the biggest English football games and advise you of where we think there's value to be had to make your sports betting life a little easier. So listeners, today's podcast is going to be a lot shorter than normal. We're going to go through betting highlights and lowlights, preview the FA Cup, talk a little bit about the final game week in Serie A, and talk about a chance to win £800,000 with Colossus bets. We've got a pod debutant today, Will Dyer from the Kindred Group, who own companies such as Unibet. Will, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Thanks very much for having me on.
Yeah, Will's someone I've followed on Twitter. I really like his angles on red card and penalty bets, and we'll actually come into that a little bit later in the pod. And of course, we're joined by the ever-present, the Mark Noble of the betting world, the workhorse, the legs. Well, Mark Noble's not really the legs anymore, but Pete, welcome back.
Cheers, good to be back.
I hear you've got a few decent bets for us today, as well as some interesting knowledge and expertise on the Finnish league. We look forward to that. And maybe we'll start with betting highlights from the last week. Will, what about you? Yeah,
sure. I guess it was the end of the Premier League season, so we had antepost coming home. For me, that meant I just about doubled my money from my pre-season bets, which I placed last kind of summer. Vardy, 34, coming in to Premier League top goal scorer. That got in by the skin of its teeth, obviously, on the final day with Danny Ings and Aubameyang both scoring, but happy to get that one in the bag. It was probably a bit of a pick that I based on the fact that VAR was introduced and that Vardy's awfully good at winning penalties, but that didn't turn out to be why he won it. He just turned out to have a great campaign, but at 33 years old, so that was nice. United, I had United to win without City and Liverpool at 6. Which also just had a miraculous amount of luck since the end of lockdown, basically. Bruno Fernandes probably basically winning that for me. That's the highlights. Do you want the lowlights?
Yeah, sure.
I think I probably could be guilty of losing a bit of discipline on the final day. I guess that's what people turn to ACCAs and fun bets on the final day of the Premier League with all the talk about the higher amount of goals per game kind of thing. I went in on a bit of things like that, and also tried an unders card ACCA in sort of 4 matches in the Premier League, because I think in the Championship final day there were 5 or 6 matches without a single card in them. So I had that in a few of the kind of dead rubber games in the Premier League, and they were scuppered by some late cards, which were just meaningless, probably time wasting fouls. So I think I probably ate into a bit of my Vardy winnings with ill-disciplined ACCAs, basically.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are guilty of that. Speaking of the final game week from the Premier League, that's probably my betting highlight, was how well the podcast did. We got about a 26% return on investment from our bets on the podcast preview of the last game week. Nigel Seeley did well for us again, picked a couple of winners. Between all three of us, we did pretty well. The low light was probably my take on the Wolves game. I went for Wolves at the price, 10-3, 4.33. I thought they were good value, and in about 90 seconds at the end of the first half, that game was pretty much scuppered. I also went for both teams to score in that game because, again, creeping up to evens, I felt that was a value play, but I got that game completely wrong. Pete, what about you?
Yeah, I think Southampton getting that win. I'm not sure they actually played as well as I expected, but that was a good win for me. Yeah, I think Wolves in that game just didn't turn up. Sometimes that happens, big games at the end of the season. The low light for me was probably that Austrian, the 2 bets that we put out. We had a 6-1 and a 2.75. After about 80 minutes, the 6-1 were winning, the other team were down to 10 men. The 2.8 was 1-0 up. In 2-minute spell, the 6-1 conceded 2 against 10 men. They lost. And then there was a 95th minute equaliser for the team that were 1-0 up.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an absolutely huge swing. Again, it's been a good July. If you look at all the bets that we've tweeted out, followers are going to have made money, but it would have been really nice if those two had come. One of those had come in for the absolute icing on the cake. That was a brutal swing. I didn't mention it as my low light because I kind of had a feeling. I had a feeling you were going to mention that. But let's think more positively. Let's find another couple of winners. Let's go to the big game at the weekend, the FA Cup final between Arsenal and Chelsea. For full clarity, Pete is a Chelsea fan, but he promises that's not going to come into his betting bias here. Chelsea are favourites. They're 2.1, 2.15 on the exchanges. You've got Arsenal about 3.55 best price with Unibet. And the draw is 3.5. And again, that's your friends at Unibet, the best price on the draw, Will. Maybe Pete, will start with you. What do you fancy here?
I like Chelsea in this game. This is just purely on the numbers that come out. So I don't know what you're hinting at here, but I just think Chelsea are a much better team. Arsenal, I'm still not sure what you're going to get. Now I think people have been talking about how well they've done against Man City and Liverpool recently, where they really played defensively. It's not something we've really seen from them for a long time. Being able to actually say, right, we're going to set up defensively. I remember David Luiz in the semi-final, man of the match, was brilliant. I'm still not 100% sure whether they're going to do that again in this game. I think they probably will to a certain extent, but I just think Chelsea have got the better players, the better team. And now that you've got Willie in goal for Chelsea, making just the standard goalkeeper saves that you need to be making, Chelsea aren't as bad defensively. Now, I think 1-1 is in play, so I actually like Chelsea on the -1/4 handicap. I'm not sure. I've just lost what the best price on that is. I don't know if you can get it, but because I think
Chelsea -1/4, about 1.9 with Bet365.
I think that's a good bet. For me, that'll be my bet because I've looked. I've got 4 correct scores that I think are standout correct scores. I've got 1-1, then I've got 1-0 to Chelsea, 2-0 to Chelsea, and 2-1. I think that's where the game will happen. Because I don't think it'll be as open as it would be in like a normal Premier League game, because it's a cup final. Arsenal are going to sit back a bit. Chelsea have a lot of the ball. And Arsenal are going to need Aubameyang or Lacazette to come up with something special, I think, to get a win here. So I like Chelsea on the -1/4.
Yeah, because it has to be settled on the day. There's no replays. If it's 1-1 or 0-0 with 5 or 10 minutes to go, the tendency for teams is normally not to go hell for leather to get a winner in normal time, regroup, speak to the manager, make substitutions, go again in extra time. So you're going for Chelsea -1/4, so you only lose half your stake if it's a draw. Will, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I would side with Chelsea as well at the match odds. I think I was looking into them to lift the trophy at 1.62 general price around. I just think they're the better team at the moment. Pulisic was amazing when he played against Liverpool as a sub the other day. I'd look maybe as a smaller kind of stake at him man of the match, but it's not been fully priced up yet across all bookmakers. But you've got 7s at 365 at the moment. But I'm taking it down the card route. I think Anthony Taylor's in charge. He's been quite an all-action ref this season in terms of pens, cards, red cards. But Arsenal are the most carded team in the Premier League as well this season. 2.52 cards per game, 5 red cards. So they're first on cards per game compared to Chelsea 14th. No red cards, 1.58. So almost a card extra per game for Arsenal. So Arsenal minus 0.5 Asian handicap cards at Bet365 is 1.975, just a shade under evens basically. I mean, David Luiz was sent off in this fixture in January. They're quite a dirty team. I expect them to be chasing the ball rather than in possession of it, which is a bit weird thinking about Arsenal teams of the past. But Chelsea, I'm expecting them to dominate.
Yeah, I had a look at the card market. I had Arsenal to win at about that price. So I thought it was about the right price, but I've not looked into it as much as you have here. It was just a quick, okay, let's price this up based on some of the historical stats. I was wondering whether the tie on the bookings market is more of a player than the odds suggest. What price did you get Chelsea at there?
I think they must have been about. I mean, on the Asian handicap opposite, they must be about 3 point something. I didn't record that down, but yeah, I don't really tend to like too much an odds-on play on a team to win a bookings bet. But Arsenal are by far the dirtiest team in the Premier League, so I think it's my bet basically for the game.
Okay, so Arsenal to pick up is that the most booking points or the most cards?
Cards, sorry,
Cards.
yeah, cards.
Okay, just a touch under evens there, and then Pete, you've gone for Chelsea minus a quarter of a goal. But Will, you would at the odds, you'd probably side with Chelsea as well.
For the win, yeah. Or
you like them
lift the trophy.
To lift the trophy. Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, if you look at expected goals throughout the season, Chelsea are what? Almost plus 30, and Arsenal are a minus figure on the expected goal difference of about -7 or something like that. So there is a big difference between the teams there. You've got Louise, Mustafi, never look like competent defenders, can give away silly fouls on the edge of the box or in the area in the case of David Luiz. I think Lacazette and Aubameyang, they're talent-wise probably the best front two there is really in the league, in my opinion. But Lacazette doesn't get selected every game. Arteta does like Nketiah. I think Lacazette will play in this game. Whether it's with a front three or front two, I'm not sure. So they are dangerous going forward. But yeah, I'm kind of happy with both those bets there. Moving from England over to Italy, Will, you had a look at the relegation scrap there.
Yeah, so there's, I mean, my angle on Italy especially is basically based upon penalties and red card markets, which I don't think have still, I mean, they've been brought down quite a lot now price-wise, but you're still getting a crazy kind of percentage of matches in Italy with a penalty in them. Depending on the referee, I've put a lot of kind of preference to how much impact the referee appointment has on the match rather than the teams involved. But looking at the fixtures list as well for this weekend, there's only 2 matches really which have any meaningful kind of on the league's final standings, and you've got Genoa playing against Verona and Lecce against Parma. These teams are playing on Sunday at the same time, 7:45. So, but the ref appointments haven't been made yet. But Genoa have been awarded 16 penalties this season, a second most in the league for a team that's fighting down at the bottom, which is quite, kind of a strange statistic. Crescito takes the penalties for them. Basically, I'd be looking at Genoa to score a penalty or Crescito to score a penalty, depending on which one you can get a better price at. But I'm holding off until we get the ref appointments. I want someone who's given sort of about 0.35 pens per game lifetime before I'll pull the trigger on something like that, because you're getting about 2.7 usually on a pen in a match in Italy now. That was about 3.5 before lockdown, but values kind of disappeared. But you can still, you can get inventive now with the bookmakers markets available. In Bet Victor, you can go into a method of goal and select your player to take the penalty. And a couple of guys that I work with, or mates of mine as well on Twitter, kind of pushed me in that direction. Where basically, if you're looking into who's kind of suspended or absent from the game, if you can find someone who's going to be taking a penalty in place of the usual penalty taker, you might get a massive price. Mancosu as well for Lecce. He's their top scorer. Basically, 75% of his goals are pens. They're up against, another team with nothing to play for in Parma. Parma concede a lot of goals, have a lot of kind of both teams to score over 2.5 goals matches. I expect it to be a bit of a chaotic match as well. And what happens is if Lecce draw and Genoa lose, it will go down to the head-to-head, which Genoa lead. So Lecce pretty much have to push for a win here. Draw's not enough. Whereas Genoa in-game could be, if it's half-time and they hear wind of what the score is in Lecce, they can kind of decide how they want to approach that game. But if Lecce lead, I'd be backing cards for Lecce. And they're not particularly a dirty team. Genoa are actually worse. Genoa have the most red cards this season with 8. But yeah, so penalties in both of those matches for Lecce and for Genoa, who will be going for it, kind of probably trying anything they can in the box to win a penalty, and depending on the referee appointment. Just elsewhere quickly, we've got one game, the Saturday games, the ref announcements have been made for. Juve play Roma, and Gianluca Rocci is the referee there, and he's an absolute nutcase.
Yeah. I think he's second or third for yellow cards, isn't he, this season?
Something like that, yeah. I've got my ref sheet, but I'll get to that in a sec if I can. Yeah, and penalties as well. I think he's over a pen every other game. So you just got to try and find out where you can get the value, really. Might be on a Ronaldo to score a penalty. Roma have scored a hell of a lot less than Juve have. Ronaldo's not completely out of the top scorer race yet. He's having about 6 shots per game at the moment, I've been informed. So he could be someone to look at as well.
Yeah, Will's certainly someone that's made me a few quid recently from following his Twitter tips on red cards and penalties especially. It was funny as a keen observer seeing the average odds for these selections drop steadily from the resumption of football to where we are now. Maybe your followers have got a lot to answer for there, Will.
Potentially that.
The bookmakers haven't been too happy with you suggesting some of these bets. And yeah, it's been fantastic following. I've definitely been on a few of your penalty selections before. So I'll 100% be on these as well. Like you say, you're getting 2 sides with everything to play for on board, which is an important thing here. They're going to be going hell for leather to get goals. So they're going to try and have the ball in that final third, getting into the penalty box, making something happen. And like you said, with VAR, it doesn't, Italy more so than other leagues, it seems that the psyche of defenders hasn't changed to know that they can't make a sly foul that the referee won't see because VAR's going to check anyway. And then with Juventus, go ahead.
It's a strange one because obviously, if all things were equal with VAR in place, the rule book is the same across countries. You should be making the same decision once. And if everything is reviewed, why are you getting 0.35 pens per game in Italy and only sort of 0.2 in the Premier League? But it must be sort of down to defenders exactly how they're approaching tackles in the final third, I guess. And maybe there's an element of clever attacking play that we don't really see in the Premier League as much.
And then getting Juventus on side as well, Ronaldo. Juventus seem to get more marginal penalties than other teams.
Yeah.
And there's rumours that there's other factors at play there. So yeah, I don't mind getting that on side as well.
It's a meaningless game, but it's 2 big teams, and they're pretty good at winning pens. It could just be one of these games where everything, cards, goals, even though it's meaningless. Yeah.
So when odds come out, I'm sure you'll tweet when they do and put up some bets. We'll make sure we retweet that and alert the followers to that. So going from season's ending to season's beginning, is there anything that either of you particularly like in antepost markets? Pete, have you had a look?
Yeah, I've had a couple that I've had a look at. I think they're not necessarily real strong bets yet, but it's something to definitely keep an eye on. I've got Aston Villa to be relegated at 3.25 because I think they really struggled to score goals. Pretty much all their goals have been set pieces, especially since the restart. They lost Wesley, strikers, and we're going with Samatta and Davis, who just don't look Premier League standard, really. So it's going to be big to watch. Are they going to buy a striker? But even if they get another striker or Wesley comes back, they need more goals from the team. Grealish, is he going to leave? If he leaves, it's a big position to fill. And they spent a lot of money last summer. I'm not sure they're going to be able to spend all that money this summer. And they really need to improve the team. So at 3.25, I think that's certainly worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I think Grealish got close to double figures in goals. And if you look at the amount of goals scored in teams that got relegated or around the relegation zone, to lose that many goals from your team, that's really going to hurt. Trezeguet Trezeguet's looked pretty good. Dean Smith's talked about they went away on this bonding trip and came back with a new mindset on how they're going to be together and relentless. But other teams will spend a lot of money. Villa spent a lot of money last summer. Didn't seem to have as much of a benefit as you'd think. And then the teams coming up, they look strong. I mean, the fact that Brentford, as good as they are, couldn't finish in the top two and might be the third team coming up, then will Fulham. It's going to be difficult for Villa next season. Any thoughts on that, Will?
Yeah, I think probably the Grealish factor would be the main thing. The difficulty we've got now is all the change of the transfer window, the fact that we've only got 5 weeks to make. I mean, the lower leagues are an absolute mess in terms of working out who's going to be playing for who. So, but the Premier League, I guess we got a bit more information about that, and I'd agree with Villa at that price potentially struggling. I'd kind of probably want to wait exactly until I saw who the 20 teams were going to make up the Premier League. But I guess with Fulham, Brentford now both through, I think I would have preferred, Swansea, Cardiff would have definitely been down there for me. Maybe Brentford and Fulham could be two of those teams that actually have a decent season straight away.
Mm. Yeah, the worry would be that the price might get affected when that's settled, right? I think the only reason you're getting this price potentially is people aren't looking at that market yet, and it only takes a few bets in that market for the prices to change because the liquidity is just not there yet. So bookmakers are pretty sensitive to moving the odds on that one. What about you, Will? Is there anything you like for next season?
Yeah, going back to Chelsea, I think we were all talking about how good they've been recently, and I think Chelsea for a top four finish is 1.73. They've obviously already announced Ziyech and Werner joining. Kai Havertz is a strong rumour. Young and improving side still in general. I think they're streets ahead of Arsenal and Spurs at the moment. And basically, in 14 of the last 17 seasons in the Abramovich era, they've finished in the top four. So, I mean, that's about 80%. So, on that basis, which obviously there's more factors at play, but that would have it down at about 1.2 chance of Chelsea finishing in the top four. I think this whole idea of the fact that there's a big six now and then Leicester are knocking on the door and Wolves and Sheffield United has probably bloated that price slightly. But I think it's a fairly big one. And obviously Man United have improved and you can't see City and Liverpool falling out of it. So maybe they have only got third or fourth to play for, but I would have it shorter than 1.73.
Okay. And Pete, if Kepa starts next season as number one, I think you'd be a layer of that, wouldn't you?
Well, that's the thing. If Chelsea just upgrade to an average Premier League keeper, you're going to save a minimum 10 goals on your defence. Yeah. So I think that's the key signing Chelsea need to make. They keep talking about centre-backs. I don't think centre-back, if they could find one for a good price, then yeah. I don't think it's a necessity for them to get a centre-back. Get the keeper, and I think third place is like challenging for like second, getting up towards there is definitely on the radar.
There's rumours of Jan Oblak, isn't there? But I think that might be a bit out of their reach. But anything,
there's a lot of stuff. But for me, I was looking at the Lille keeper, Maignan. He looks good. But literally, any goalkeeper will be a big upgrade. So even if they brought someone in just for like a stopgap, that would be fine.
Chelsea do have a bit of a history of buying strikers that have been incredible elsewhere, and you think this could potentially be either the final piece of the jigsaw or something that really elevates them, and it hasn't quite worked before. If you look at Shevchenko, you look at...
How old is he?
Agreed. So my point was going to be, is Timo Werner at that age where they finally bought a striker that is close to world class, that can grow as Chelsea grow and become, the next Lewandowski or Kane?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good analysis of it. Maybe that usually is either someone. I mean, they haven't blooded many youngsters they didn't in the Mourinho era, but you're probably right. There were too many two old guys coming in. Werner is an all-round striker as well, I think. So it could be. I mean, he scores a hell of a lot of goals for Leipzig and Germany. So I'm not saying that he's not going to just be a poacher or something, but he gets involved in the in the startup play a bit as well. They've got enough good players around him for him to maybe change his kind of approach more and actually be the finisher rather than the build-up play as well. I don't know a hell of a lot about Leipzig's midfield and how productive they are, but I think he provided a lot of assists. He might not need to do that so much, but I think you're right.
1.73, did you say, Will?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've convinced me. I actually really, really like that price because, as Pete knows, I'm not Tammy Abraham's biggest fan. I do like Giroud, but I think having Werner, if they can get a keeper as well, even without getting a proper goalkeeper, I think as soon as we stop recording, I'm gonna go and back that. I like that a lot. Chelsea to finish in the top 4 at 1.73, and then again, I like Pete's bet, Aston Villa to be relegated at 3.2. So hopefully that's 2 anti-post plays for the listeners, which can provide some dividend. Maybe get close to doubling our money at the end of the season, like you will.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of doubling your money, we've got something that could do a lot more than that. We're going to have another play of the Colossus big jackpot of the weekend. It's a pick 15. So £800,000 is up for grabs here. There's games in all sorts of leagues. Scotland, Finland, Sweden, Belarus, I think, Portugal. So I don't think we're going to have many syndicates entering with huge expertise on a lot of these matches. But what it is a really low stakes way of giving yourself a run for your money and trying to still be in with a chance of winning come Sunday evening or Monday. The game finishes with the syndicate finishes with the big one, Ross County v Motherwell. I know all the listeners will be tuning into that at 7:45. So I think an element of tactics here. You can pick all 3 outcomes: home win, draw, and away outcome. But obviously, you're increasing the stake you need to invest to get a dividend by doing that. But the benefit of doing that is you remain in further down the line. Pete, I know you've had a look at this. Will, I'm not going to put you on the spot because I know it's not something you've looked at. But what are your thoughts, Pete? Where are we putting our lines here?
Yeah, so obviously we've already mentioned the Arsenal-Chelsea. If I was picking one, I'd pick Chelsea. If you wanted to be conservative, add on the draw as well on that one. Mm-hmm. I've looked a lot into these Finnish games as well. They've picked the tougher games in the Finnish league, typical. But for the HJK Helsinki, I think that's a really tight game. 0-0s, 1-0s. I like Helsinki as the favourites. So if you had to pick one, I'd pick them. But I think the draw is in play. So if you're doing multiple lines, get on the draw as well.
Why do you think the goal expectancy is low there? Is it shot data or?
Yeah, I looked at a lot of the shot data. They're the 2 top teams as well. And even if you look historically when they play, it's tight games. The Finnish league is actually a relatively low scoring, it's a bit lower than average scoring league as well. So it's sort of when they play the lower teams, often they can put 3 or 4 past them. But when the top teams play, it can be tight.
Well, you're right, because the away side here, KUPS, I've got no idea what it stands for. They're leading the league after 6 games, but they
won the league last year.
If you look at their goals per game, the match goals, it's only 2 match goals per game, and they're top of the league. That's not something you see a lot when a side's top of the league. So we're not just talking about goals they've scored. We're talking about goals they've scored plus conceded. So match goals, it's only 12-6 so far. So I can see why you think it's going to be low scoring there. Any other Finnish?
Yeah, then the ROPS versus TPS is the same. I like the home team, and if you wanted, I'd probably stay just with the home team on this one. The draw a bit in play, but TPS, they're the bottom team. They've lost every game, but they're probably not as bad as that looks. But I like ROPS on the home team here. SJK, it's about the same. The home. You'd probably lean with the home team, but that's difficult. But then when you come talking about the strategy, obviously I think you need to have a couple of games that are sort of going a bit against the grain. So, because if you just pick all like the main favourites, like a lot of other people are going to be doing that. So even if you win, you're going to be sharing it with a lot of people. So you want to have something just out of the ordinary. And if you
not only do you want a share of the 80k, you want it all, Pete.
Well, But it's like, if you just pick all like if there was one with like all like 1.5 favourites, if you picked all of them, everyone's going to be picking them.
Yeah.
So I think it's the first week of the Scottish season, isn't it? So I don't know whether it's worth looking at the games, maybe going for an outside game. We've got some home, Ross County even are a home underdog. Is it worth going for that? The Swedish games I've looked at, they're the ones with like the biggest favourites, really. I think they got three of the 4 games have got odds-on favourites, and the other one's about 2.2. So I'm not sure whether to just bang in the favourites or maybe look for an outsider on that one. And then you've got like the cup final in Benfica Porto. That looks like a game that could go literally either way.
So that could be one where we pick all 3 lines in that one.
Possibly, yeah. Or I don't know. Would you expect Porto are the favourites? Would you expect them to be the most popular pick in that game? I suppose it's difficult to tell. But if you feel that way, maybe take a Benfica draw or something like that. But it's quite interesting exploring all the possibilities. They've even thrown a Chinese game in there, which is a bit strange. But there's no way you can know about all these games.
Safe to say, though, you've already spent more time looking at this pick 15 than almost anyone in the world. And I know you've not finished yet. So we're going to put a syndicate ticket up for people to join us on. Pete's going to be he's already done the majority of the hard labour there. We'll share it on Twitter. You can go to colossusbets.com, search for Save the Punter. We've had a few sharing winning tickets before, a couple of years ago when we first did this. We're just getting back into it now. If you use the referral code Save the Punter, I think we get something for that and you get something for that. I think it's just a free ticket for up to a certain amount. But we'll put that on Twitter when our final ticket's ready there. Gents, thanks very much for joining us. It was going to be a shorter podcast than normal, but I think that was about the average length there. Will and Pete had quite a few angles for you this weekend. We're hoping for penalties in Italy. We want a Lecce penalty, a Genoa penalty, a Juventus penalty. We'd like Arsenal to be dirty, Chelsea to lift the FA Cup, and of course Villa to be relegated next year and Chelsea to finish in the top 4. That would be the dream scenario. If you're wondering why I haven't had a lean in the FA Cup, listeners, I am a notoriously bad FA Cup bettor. My FA Cup ROI is by far and away the worst part of my betting portfolio. There's no point me suggesting anything, but Chelsea are the better team here. So I think I'll be siding with Pete and Will's bets, I reckon. Gents, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Paris.
Cheers.
See you again, mate.
Cheers. So we're going to have a go at the Colossus pick 6 again at Goodwood. We're picking horses to place in each race. We were very close yesterday. We got 5 of the 6 legs correct. Tom Mayrick is back again to give us our picks for today. Tom, who have you gone for in leg 1?
So we've got Al Kakwa for William Haggis. Looks potentially well handicapped and a big improver. Won his last race by 8 lengths. So could definitely be one for us. And then the other is Mafia Power, who also won last time out, won very nicely, and a step up in trip should help. Okay.
In leg 2, I understand you've gone for Breathtaking Look and One Master.
Yep. So Breathtaking Look, very, again, consistent horse, is stepping up, which on the basis of his recent races will really, really help, and on his pedigree. And then One Master, consistent horse, grade 1 winner. So we're hoping that his step down in his step down in class today will really pay dividends.
Race 3, there's only 5 runners, and we were on the fence about whether to pick 1 or pick 2, give ourselves more of a chance, but lower our potential dividends. I think that we're going to go for just a favourite. Is that right?
Yep, made a complete mockery of a handicap at Ascot last time. That's Colossus, won by 4.5 lengths in the 22 runner field. The others in the race, kind of much of a muchness in my eyes, and it's a boring pick, but I think it's the one that will get it done.
Come on, Jim Crowley. All right, leg 4. Who have we gone for?
Prompting for David O'Meara. £6 well in, won at the weekend at York. I watched the race again last night just to double check. Could have won by a lot more, but was only kind of pushed out. £6 penalty, but is still well in by about £4. So that's definitely one for us. The other one is Cliffs of Capri. Again, ran at the weekend. Horses at the moment are being run quite quickly on turnarounds. Came second. Obviously, they're looking to pick up some money again. So we only need him to place. So it could be the one to follow.
And Willie John as well?
Willie John, yes. Willie John's run well. I think he's a horse that we haven't seen the best of. He has run a lot higher than this. His marks dropped down. So hopefully, again, we'll run into a place for us.
Yeah, we've picked 3 there because there's quite a lot of runners, 15 runners at the moment. Leg 5 is a 5 furlong race where Batash is heavily favoured. Have we gone for Batash?
Yeah, it's boring, but I can't see him outside the places. So, at 1.3, it's fairly obvious if you ask me. But the other one we've gone for to get in a place because I think, to be honest, if there's any horse that could upset Batash, it's a horse called Liberty Beach. Came second at Royal Ascot to Batash. Recently ran second at Sandown. Clearly in form. I think it's the second best horse in the race.
And Mav, to finish us off, who's going to bring us home in leg 6?
We're hoping that we can get a 1, 2 or 3 in any order with Alunak and Communique. Alunak, very consistent horse, has been running at the very highest level and a drop down certainly suit. The other is obviously, as I say, Communique, who's run back into form recently, came second at York about 10, 12 days ago now to a horse called Eagles by Day, who ran very well behind Stradivarius on Tuesday. So the form on that looks pretty solid.
Yeah, I think there's only 6 runners in that race, so we'll only get 2 places. So we're hoping for them to finish in the top 2, not 1, 2 or 3.
That's lucky you checked that.
Does that change your pick or?
No, doesn't change it at all. Those 2, I think, are the picks of the races by quite, in my eyes, quite a way.
Okay. Tom, thanks very much for that. We've put you under pressure. There's a short, sharp explanation of our picks. You can go on www.colossusbets.com, search for Save the Punter. We're a captain there. We've created a syndicate. We're hoping to bring home the £7 grand for you today. Cheers, Tom.
Thanks, Paz.